Barak Yahawah, Ba'ashem Yahawashi, Ba'ashem, Rawchaa Qadash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is The Hammer of the Whole Earth. And pretty much this lesson is inspired from an article I was reading. And pretty much, I've been searching, for a topic to do. And watching videos and, just going through different sites that I normally go to see if anything would inspire me to do a lesson. And pretty much I came across this article, which I'm going to share with you now. And what you're looking at here pretty much is a still of a military exercise that's going on in Germany right now. That's being hosted in Germany of NATO and 25 nations. And it's called, I believe it's called, Air Defender 23. And pretty much, as you can see there, and the reason this America, it's an American plane, and you see the German flag because it's being hosted in Germany. And pretty much what it is could be a number of things, as they were saying in the article. It could be a thing of a pretense for them to actually invade Russia, which I don't think that's stupid. And it's pretty much a show of force to show off their weaponry. But there was an individual within the article that used to be an ex-military, and he said he's inspected these weapons, and he said it's all hype. He said pretty much America's defense or strength, military-wise, as far as their weaponry, certain weaponry, it's a good show of force, but a lot of the stuff doesn't actually work. So it's like a big hype, so it got me interested. So I read the article. I saw part of the video in the article, and I was going through this particular precept. So Lord's will, this to be an edifying lesson. So this is the article right here. It says, in run up to World War III, because World War III will happen. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But there's one major prophecy that's unrolling or unfolding right now in the news that is happening right now, that has to happen fully before World War III can really set off, so to speak, and that is the prophecy of the MOTB, which is a microchip. Now when we read in Jeremiah chapter 2, right? Jeremiah chapter 2 and a verse, I'm sorry, not Jeremiah 2, I'm thinking of Ezekiel. Got Jeremiah on the brain. Ezekiel chapter 2 and verses 9 and 10. And when I looked, behold, an hand was sent unto me, and lo, a roll of a book was therein. And he spread it before me, and it was written within and without, and there was written therein lamentations and mourning and woe. So this book is written with lamentations, mourning, and woe, because eventually these are the things that are going to come upon the earth in many different forms. Whether it's a pestilence, whether it's war, whether it's famine, whether it's, calamities, deaths, whatever the case may be. And one of the main things that is going to be happening, outside of these pestilences and plagues and all that, are wars. But in the midst of all of that, there's going to be a great insurrection against the nation of Israel, because these devils are moving forward with their agenda, and they're not going to let anyone stop them, because the Spirit of the Lord is on them, on the left-hand side, to do this. See, Esau got to earn his pay. You know, they got to do what they got to do because that is their job. They're going to keep getting more and more wicked. There's going to be more and more stuff that's going to be repulsive to most. But it has to happen because the Lord got that demonic spirit on them to do this. Jeremiah 28:8, it says, the prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied against many countries and against great kingdoms, which we're also doing that right now. We're prophesying against many countries because you have the NATO nations, which are many countries, you know, that include the EU. This includes America, Canada, you know, all of those so-called European nations. They're all a part of it. They're major countries. Then you also have the ones that are not a part of NATO, like Russia, China, India, Pakistan, and others. You know, Iran, Iraq, and others, you know, so-called Arab nations that are, you know, we're prophesying against too, because all nations are going down. By the time the Lord comes back, all nations will be put down. All right. And it says of war and of evil and of pestilence. So we're prophesying of all of these things coming, right? Now, when we go to Revelation 8:13, it says, and I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe. Now, woe represents destruction. It represents war. Matter of fact, let's go to the word woe. You know, woe is me, you know. So woe is wahi. Alas, woe. See right here, a primary exclamation of grief. You know, and nothing brings more grief than a war or pestilence, you know, sicknesses and things of that nature. And in this case, we're dealing with actual war. And notice that the angel said what? Woe, 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 which was 3 woes or 3 wars or 3 world wars to the inhabitants of the earth. Why? Because this is going to affect the inhabitants of the earth, because these are going to be worldwide events. World war means just that, world war. You know, when you have a world war, there are many nations involved within this war. You had World War I. You had many nations involved in that, and you had World War II, which you had the same nations involved in that, pretty much. It says, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels which are yet to sound, because when the apostle John saw these things, they happened in his vision, but they hadn't happened yet, you know, but they were shortly to come, you know. It says, because they were yet to sound, see, which are yet to sound. So when we go to the 9th chapter of Revelation and the 12th verse, it says, 1 woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. So if your eyes are open, right, and you have watched the breakdown of Revelation from the 1st verse down to the 11th verse, you know, and your spiritual eyes are open, you know that this is talking about World War I. And that's why here it says, 1 woe is past. And World War I did pass. It was from around 1914 to about 1919. In the scripture, it calls it 5 months. It was a little more than 4 years, you know, going into the 5th year. It says, and behold, there will come 2 woes more hereafter. So 2 more world wars will be coming after that first one. When we go to the 11th chapter of Revelation, and the 14th verse, it says, the 2nd woe was past, and this was World War II. World War II came and went. All right. And behold, the 3rd woe cometh quickly. And even though it's been, let's see, go back to about 45. Let's say that's 55 years, 75 years. Let's say about 78 years, right? Since the last World War. Now, to us, that's a whole lifetime. But you got to remember the Most High's time is different from our time. So 75, 78, 100 years is nothing. 1,000 years to the Lord is nothing. You know, because one day with the Lord to us is 1,000 years. So the 3rd woe cometh quickly. So we're in the midst of it. We're in the build up to it. Things are happening. You know, the militaries are getting in place. And these things are ramping up. You know, so this stuff is coming, but the MOTB has to be fully in place before the final destruction can come, before the salvation can come, before any other prophecies really go forward fully. Because, you know, they can get into little skirmishes here and there, you know, but as far as to get all into the war for it to end, the MOTB has to actually fully be fulfilled. Then everything else can move forward. You know, so right now the on the prophecy table, the MOTB is what's, you know, holding up prophecy from going forward. Until they don't implement that fully, everything else will not fall in place. But once that's fully implemented, then everything, you know, will start moving a lot faster. So, going to the article, it says, in run-up to World War III, former Marine intel officers say U.S. government overhypes its weapons capability and sells a perception of American invincibility. So pretty much it's just a smoke and mirrors, just like America's a smoke and mirrors. And it should be no surprise to anybody, because they were told that America was a beacon of gold, you know, this place where you can go and, you know, it's a city of gold, the streets are paved in gold, you know, you go there and you prosper. And when people get here, that's not the case. I mentioned the new documentary, which is a series on Netflix, I believe it is, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he said when he came to this country, you know, he had that mentality of, you know, America is this great beacon, you know, something along those lines. He said, oh, sure, they had problems. You know, you had, you know, he was mentioning a few of the problems that they had that was going on back then in the 60s and 70s. He said, but he didn't see that. In other words, he pushed that to the side for the bigger goal of what was presented to him as this big golden city, you know, this big, great land of so-called opportunity, you know? So it's all a smoke and mirrors. So there's an individual who says, as U.S.-sponsored war games get underway in the skies over Germany, it started already, on a scale not seen since the founding of NATO in 1949, one well-positioned analyst says U.S. government has lied to us for years about the effectiveness of the Patriot system and other weapons. Now, whether or not this is hype, you know, whether or not it's true or false, it doesn't matter. It's just all playing into, you know, the finalization or destruction of this place anyway. It says the United States is taking the next couple of weeks to hold massive war games over the skies of Europe that are meant to send a message to Russia. But does U.S. military power live up to the hype? Let's break it down and get into a side of the story you are unlikely to get from the corporate mainstream media. This exercise has been dubbed Air Defender 23. It says it kicks off today, June 14th, billed as the largest air deployment exercise in NATO history. Germany will serve as a host and logistical hub. 3 flight zones will be temporarily closed to civilians. Air traffic over Germany, and authorities are warning there will be delays to civilian flights. From June 12 to June 23, up to 250 aircraft will be stationed across 6 military bases with 25 countries taking part, all Edomite countries. The U.S. alone is sending 100 aircraft across the Atlantic. This training exercise is so intense that some analysts have even warned about the danger that it could actually be cover for a surprise NATO attack on Russia and the launching of World War III, which we know that the MOTB has to really be fully in place before they can really, you know, push it through, so to speak. Now, could there be little skirmishes here and there? Of course. But it's not going to be in full bloom. And, you know, because once World War III is in full bloom, it's not going to take that long, because you're dealing with nuclear missiles or hypersonic missiles and other technologies, you know, that they have, scalar wave technology and stuff like that. So it's not going to take that long. And plus, once that gets on the way, you're going to have Yahawashi on his way too. So It says, we all know that if the U.S. and its allies take us down that path, such a war would likely escalate to nuclear exchanges. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's all about a nuclear exchange. This is the finality. All right. This is the end game, the end goal. You know, there's nothing else above that. You know, as far as the destruction of this place, it's gonna go out via nuclear missiles. They haven't been experimenting on nuclear technology, you know, going back to the atom bomb, hydrogen bomb, so on and so forth, for nothing. They haven't had their scientists probing and testing all of these things and doing tests on Bikini Island and other places around, you know, the world, wherever they've been testing these nuclear or these atomic bombs and all that, for no reason. They're doing it because they plan on using it. Now, these devils use that technology of these missiles upon Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, what most people don't understand is that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were just the last two of the missiles, the biggest ones that they dropped on Japan. Prior to that, they dropped a whole bunch of bombs, you know, in Tokyo and different other places, but not on the magnitude of those two of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You know, so when you do the research, there were a lot of bombs that were dropped in that time period upon Japan, but it just happened to be those two that caused a major destruction, you know, and that's what brought the end, you know, of the war, so to speak. So Zechariah 14:12 says, and this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord shall smite the people, will smite the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Right. So this is a plague. When you read, I believe that's 2nd Ezra 16, it speaks about the plague. This plague, you know, when the scriptures speak about plague, sometimes it's talking about a disease, sometimes it's talking about, you know, mildew, sometimes it's talking about, you know, a swarm of locusts. But in this case, it's talking about the missiles. All right. Matter of fact, I'm gonna read this one that the brother posted. 2nd Ezra 16:13. For strong is his right hand that bendeth the bow, his arrows that he shooteth are sharp, and shall not miss when they begin to be shot into the ends of the world. It says, behold, right, into the ends of the world. No man is strong enough to shoot a missile across the world. All right. Even the strongest man on the planet could only shoot an arrow so far. This is not talking about an actual arrow as far as bow and arrow. This is talking about missiles that fly, that the prophets, when they saw them, compared them to arrows. This, which was the best thing that they could, you know, describe them as, because you have the bow and the arrow, you have the silo, you know, and you have the nuclear silo, and then you have the missile that comes out of that body, out of that silo, or out of that bow. And it comes out and it goes to its destination. It says, behold, the plagues are sent. Beautiful. The brother's right on point. And shall not return again until they come upon the earth. So these are the plagues. It says the fire is kindled. And the fire that's kindled is not going to be something that they're going to actually kindle and make a fire of. Because when we go to Job, the 20th chapter, it says a fire not blown. You know, when it speaks about the iron weapon, you know, it's going to be a fire that's not blown. So like it for one moment. It says the fire is kindled and shall not be put out. Right. That's why it says that that whose fire is not quenched. You know, because it's going to burn for a long time. You're not going to be able to put it out. It's going to have to go out on its own. That's why it says a fire that is not quenched, where the fire quenches not, or something along those lines. It says till it consume the foundation of the earth, meaning Esau's foundation, their whole structure, you know, their empire, you know, because they have structured this world and they set up the foundation according to their ways. It says, like as an arrow which is shot of a mighty archer returneth not backward, even so the plagues that shall be sent upon earth shall not return again. You know? So let's get over here, and then at Lord's will I come back and read the brother's precept, because he's on it. He's on it. Beautiful. All right, so Zechariah 14:12, and this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet. And what can cause that? Nuclear fire. That's why when we go to the book of 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, it speaks about the elements melting with fervent heat. And their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. And we see a depiction of this, a very good depiction of it, but not fully, but a very good depiction of it in the movie Judgment Day, Terminator 2 movie, where Sarah Connor is on the fence and she sees that wall of fire coming. That's how it's going to be. But the difference is that it ain't just going to blow away the flesh and leave the skeleton and the fence and all that. It's gonna, all of that's gonna melt. From the hardest element to melt to the easiest one to melt. All of it is gonna melt. You know, there ain't gonna be nothing left here. This America's gonna be a plain. Even the mountains are gonna be destroyed by these missiles and by the lasers from the chariots. There ain't gonna be nothing left here. It's just gonna be a plain. Plain means it's going to be flat land. You know, after the fire quenches, it's going to be a flat land of, like when you see a field that's been burnt, but it's going to be worse than that. Now, let's go back to the article. It says, such a war would likely escalate to nuclear exchanges, because that's what it's about. It's about nuclear fire. But even a conventional war with Russia would result in significant damage to major U.S. cities and military installations, all of which would become easy targets for non-nuclear hypersonic missiles. These are super fast missiles that the U.S. Patriot system appears helpless to defend against, because this is the land of unwalled villages. You know, they can't defend against it. It says, to hear former U.S. Marine Intelligence Officer and UN Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter tell it. Right, this is a former U.S. Marine. He was an intelligence officer and a UN weapons inspector. He says, much of Western military power is built on perception and not on real world war scenarios. Right, so it's all about perspective, and perception is everything. You know, people, when people go to fight, you can have an individual that can't fight worth a lick, but he could talk a good game. And he could scare the opponent just by talking shit. And this is what America does. They huff and they puff, but they really, they don't possess the capabilities that they claim to possess. Now, they have a strong military. They have strong presence. They have good weaponry and all of that. But a lot of the shit don't work. The guy is telling it. He says Russia, on the other hand, is focused more on making sure its military hardware works and works consistently. Why? Because that's the spirit the Lord has on them. Because they're going to be the ones used mainly in other nations, even America's allies. But this is one of the nations that's going to be used to destroy this place. So the Lord is making sure that their weaponry is on point. It's intact. It's working. Is working, inside joke, rather than on trying to bedazzle the world with a glitzy public relations campaign. And this is what America is trying to do, or doing, bedazzling with this appearance. I gotta check it out. Brother said the movie Oppenheimer is a good movie. Is that in the movies, or is it on Netflix? Or I think it just came out. I think it might just be in the movies. Oh, beautiful. Let me read this one real quick. Isaiah 9:5. For every battle of the warriors with confused noise and garments rolled in blood, but this particular war, the final war to end all wars, shall be with burning and fuel of fire. This is why Einstein said, I don't know what World War III will be fighting with. I don't know what. How did he say it? I don't know what weapons World War III would be fought with, but World War IV would be fought with sticks and stones or something along those lines, because they know about this nuclear technology and how they plan on destroying this place, and when they use it, the so-called nuclear weapons, they're going to, this place is going to be finished. He says, I can't vouch for how accurate Ritter's assessment is. I don't know him, but I do think it's important to give him a full hearing and make up your own mind. He does have actual military experience in Iraq and has inspected the weapons he talks about up close and personal. Does he have some secret motive to lie to us? I don't know. And time will tell whether his perspective is the right one or not. But again, I think we would be foolish to write him off without giving him a full hearing. Yeah, but pretty much the Lord said that this place is not going to have the defense. So his assessment could be right. It could be wrong. He might be lying to the people to try to, get the Russians and others to advance, or whatever the case may be. But we know that when the time comes, just like the chariots disabled, certain nuclear sites of Esau, the Lord is going to also disable certain things on America. You're going to have missiles flying, right? And when those missiles fly, America is going to try to defend against it with their Patriot missiles. And even if the Patriot missile hits the nuclear missile, guess what? It's not going to damage it because the Spirit of the Lord is going to be in it. Let's see. The brother put it up, Elder. I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Yep, the water, bro, the water. Yeah. So it says the Patriot anti-air defense system is one weapon that Ritter focuses on in an interview that was live streamed today, June 14, on YouTube. If the truth about U.S. capabilities lies halfway between what Ritter tells us and what corrupt U.S. military officials like General Mark Milley, and Lloyd Austin tell us, which I suspect may be the case, the U.S. NATO military power is not nearly as invincible as Americans and Europeans have been led to believe. Right. And this leads us into Jeremiah 50. There's still a little bit. This is the video here. Like I said, I watched maybe 3 minutes of it. Lord's will, I could watch some more. But let's get into this Jeremiah here. Salaki for that. It says, for lo, this is Jeremiah 50:9. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations. Right, so there's going to be an assembly of great nations that's going to come against America. It doesn't necessarily name them, but we can, by what's going on today, and the enemies of America and the allies of the enemies of America, we can deduce, that of course Russia, China, India, which has nuclear capability, Pakistan, some of those, the allies of Russia. You have Iran, you have Iraq, some of those other so-called Arab nations, and eventually even some of the allies of America are going to turn against her. So it says from the North Country, right? Because Russia is found in the North Country. And by the way, North Korea, yep, the water. North Korea, they're found up in the North Country. And a part of, a small part of Russia is in Europe, but the biggest part of Russia is in Asia. So Russia is a country that is in two continents. It says, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence shall she be taken. Meaning, once they set up and take arms against her, America is going to be taken, because the Lord is going to cause them to be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. Right? So it says their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. Now, when we read this here, in the New King James Version, it says, their arrows shall be like those of an expert warrior. Why? Because these Russians, right, they are not only making sure that their arsenal is equipped, but also that their arsenal is working properly, because they're maintaining it, they're testing it, they're making sure that everything works. As to where America, they're just showing a show of force, and the weapons inspector saying that their shit really ain't up to par. It says none shall return in vain. Why? Because all of these missiles will be shot. Let's see if we can find another one here. Right, their arrows will be like skilled warriors who do not return empty-handed. Their arrows are like a skilled warrior who does not return empty-handed. That's pretty much the same. Let's see what the NLT says. NLT says the enemy's arrows will go straight to the mark. They will not miss. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah, because it's going to be expert. Yeah. All right, so now let's move on. It says, and Chaldea shall be a spoil. The Chaldea is another code name for America. The Chaldeans were the top magi's of the Babylonian Empire. It says, all that spoil her shall be satisfied, saith the Lord. Because you were glad, because you rejoiced, O ye destroyers of mine heritage. And this is why the Lord is bringing this destruction upon them, because of what they did to us. So all of this stuff, Jake out there is mad because, they haven't been paid reparations. The other tribes, nothing has been given to them as a consolation, so to speak, but it's because at the end the Lord is going to bring it all at once upon these devils. That's all. We ain't going to get nothing on this side. It says, because you are grown fat as the heifer at grass and bellow as bulls. And even if they give something, that's still going to work against us, because the scriptures say, even if you recompense me, I will return your recompense upon your own head. It says, your mother shall be sore confounded. Now your mother is dealing with England, which that individual, I forget his name, that's trying to say that America is not Babylon the Great. He's trying to say that, do y'all know that England is... We already know that. We've been teaching that for years. What are you talking about? You got these Johnny-come-latelys, that talk about that, they're trying to bring stuff in, and trying to tell us like we don't know. We've been talking about this. How many lessons have we done just during the YouTube era dealing with the mother of this scripture here referring to England? And honestly, I just gotta say, with that individual, I forgot his name, but that dude got a proud look, man. I'm sorry, he just got a proud look. I personally don't necessarily like him, because he got a proud look, and I don't like people with proud looks. But that's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong, but who knows? The Lord knows, or the Lord sees. It says, your mother shall be sore confounded, she that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be what? A wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. And what is the hindermost of the nations? The last in position. Because the hindermost could be the last days, and the hindermost is also the last in place. Like it said, after, part, end. Right, it could be the end of something. End, issue, event. Later time, it could be the last days. Posterity, last, hindermost. And hindermost is located furthest to the rear. And this is the furthest you can go before you start hitting the east again. So America is going to be, which is the hindermost of the nations, is going to be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. All that's going to be left here are desert creatures, unclean desert creatures. It says, because of the wrath of the Lord, it shall not be inhabited. Right, because there's not going to be anyone that sets up shop here again. No human. The only thing that will be here are these desert creatures. These unclean desert creatures that the scriptures call devils. It said, and it gives you a list of them in Isaiah 34 and other chapters, but Isaiah 34 is a more in-depth one that goes into it. But it shall be wholly desolate, meaning completely desolate. Everyone that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished and hiss at all her plagues. Right, because at one time, Babylon, America, was looked at as this great beacon of light, this great place to go, land of opportunity, leaders of the free world. and then it's going to turn into something that's desolate. Just like at one time Rome was looked at as this great big, nation, that was back then, the technology of the times is going to be looked at, it's looked at now as like it's destroyed. There's nothing remaining of it except for the ideas of it. So, lucky for 1 minute. Yeah, Salaki for that. All right, so they're going to be looking at it, hissing at her, as to one time they were looking at her and praising her. It says, put yourselves in array against Babylon round about, all ye that bend the bow. Right, so all of these nations that have the missile are going to eventually shoot, at America. Even some of America's allies. It says, shoot at her, spare no arrows, because everything in the arsenal will be used. There will be nothing left over. Everything will be used. And John heard, the 200 million missiles. It says, for she hath sinned against the Lord. Because, here it is, you're saying that you're a God-fearing nation, that you stand upon the principles of the Bible, but everything that you do is contrary to the scriptures. So much so, even now you're setting up AI to rewrite the Bible to fit everybody's lifestyle. That ain't how it works. But this is the demonic mind of these devils. Shout against her round about. She hath given her hand. Her foundations are fallen. Her walls are thrown down. For it is the vengeance of the Lord. Take vengeance upon her as she hath done, do unto her. So the Lord is going to totally annihilate this place. So she's not going to, the Lord said he will not at all acquit the wicked. They're going to pay. Even though they haven't paid yet, they're going to pay. But when the Lord pours it upon them, he's going to pour it upon them without stopping. That tells you that in the book of Obadiah. And then there's a scripture in the Apocrypha where it speaks about with us, the Lord, punishes us by measure. But with the other nations, not so. He waits for them to build all the way up. And then when he comes down on them, he don't have no mercy on them. It says, cut off the sword from Babylon. These are your farmers. And him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest, for fear of the oppressing sword. Right, because when the fear of the oppressing sword comes, it's going to be a total annihilation. In that movie, The Day After, when they start showing you the missiles flying up, and they show you, they were flying out, and you had farmers out there. Well, all of them, when they see that oppressing sword, they're going to be afraid. Because everything is going to be taken out. There ain't going to be nothing left. They shall turn everyone to his people, and they shall flee everyone to his own land. This is why you have nations going back home, getting the hell out of Dodge, because the Lord is getting this place ready for the destruction. Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven him away. First, the king of Syria had devoured them, and last, this Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had broken his bones. Right, and this is why they got to pay. You know, and this is applied to America today. All right, because none of these things happened to ancient Babylon. All right, this is how you know that this ain't talking about the destruction of ancient Babylon, because ancient Babylon was not destroyed in that fashion. Ancient Babylon was just a takeover. You know, Darius the Mede came in there while the vice regent, you know, which was the king's son that was set up as King Belshazzar, was having a party with his nobles and all that and their wives, and they came and took him over. It says, therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts, the power of Israel, behold, I will punish the king of Babylon and his land as I have punished the king of Assyria. And I will bring Israel again to his habitation, and he shall feed on Carmel and Bashan. And so, all right, here, let's go to the 21st verse. It says, go up against the land of Merathaim. Now, the land of Merathaim is double rebellion, but is also double bitterness, which goes back to the Hebrew word mar, which means bitter, which is a name for America, for Babylon. It's another name for Babylon, which is another name for America. And the word America means bitter. It says here double rebellion, but also here double bitterness. And when you go to the root word is bitter or bitterness. And it says here another name for Babylon, which is America. And it says, go up against the land of Merathaim, even against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekod. Now, word Pekod, Pakwawad, means visitation, because America is going to be visited. She is going to be visited of the Lord by those missiles and by the lasers from the chariots. Pakwawad, visitation. The people in the Babylon, a symbolic name for Babylon, see? A symbolic name for Babylon. It says, waste and utterly destroy after them, saith the Lord, and do according to all that I have commanded thee. A sound of battle is in the land and of great destruction. And this is what we're hearing right now. We're hearing the drums of war. You know, we're hearing all of the hype and the rumors of wars and the exercises and everything that's being prepped for what's coming. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? Because you've been a hammer on the earth. You've been bullying the earth. But now you are waning. You are falling. This is why you have your own individuals from among you, dropping a dime on you, so to speak. You know, or dropping a cell phone call on you. You know, because they're telling the world that, look, don't believe the hype. This whole show that America's, their shit don't work like they saying it, like they are bragging that it works. It says, Ritter says many of the weapon systems in the Western NATO arsenal are overhyped and don't work, at least not as advertised in the slick propaganda videos put out by NATO member states, or even as seen in the skies during the vaunted military exercises. Why? He gives an intriguing answer to that question. Because they were built by criminals, he says. He then goes on to explain how the U.S. defense industry works, with contractors putting out weapons that maximize profits rather than focusing on functionality during actual military scenarios against a fellow superpower like Russia or China. So pretty much it's all about, it's all about profit. It's not about functionality. So if they focus more on trying to make money, they're not going to focus on trying to make sure that the weapon works properly. As long as they can make the most money out of it. See? Because testing things costs money. You got to pay somebody. If this part doesn't work, you got to replace it. You got to make sure that everything is in working order. That takes money. And that takes away from them. So their thing is just to sell the arsenal. Most people look at the arsenal and say, oh, this looks good, and buy it. The Russians, their stuff might not look as cool or as downdraft, but their stuff works, he said. Why? Because the Most High got that spirit on them. Remember, it says, beat your swords into plowshares and your pruning hooks into spears. In other words, get ready for this war. And Russia, for the most part, has been investing a lot of their money into their weaponry, Why? Because that's the spirit the Lord got on them. The Patriot system, for example, is filled with glitches in its radar. It is a problematic system at best, he said, especially when run on full auto mode. To run it effectively, he said, it must be run on manual mode, but that requires several operators per unit to get months of training. If running the system on full auto mode, which the Ukrainians have been trained to do, it can take up to 6 or 7 missiles to hit one enemy missile and knock it out of the sky. And this is why it says there was a news, I was watching it. I forget where it was at. I don't know if it was WION or one of those. They were saying that Ukraine, they're given up to about 6 shots. If they don't hit the target within 6 shots, then they got to move on to something else. And this is what the guy's saying. It says, this is unsustainable, said Ritter, who goes into detail about how these systems are designed and how they are not vastly superior to Russian counter weapons, at least not in a real world scenario of how wars are fought. Right, because simulation is one thing. You can win a simulation, but when you're actually in the thick of it, in the real world, in reality, you know, that's a different story. It says we can argue about how much credibility should be assigned to Ritter's analysis, but here's the bottom line. The U.S. military has never gone up against a force like Russia or even China. If you look at all the wars we've been involved in since the end of World War II, they have all been against countries that have little or no real air force. Iraq has Scud missiles, but nothing like the Russian possesses in terms of the numbers and capability. We have never seen war against a country with an air force comparable to ours, armed with hypersonic missiles, thousands of tanks, and armored vehicles, all supported by their own defense industry capable of churning out endless munitions. Have we been lied to by a succession of U.S. presidents going back to the early days of the Cold War? Has our government combined with the corrupt media given we Americans a false sense of security and invincibility? Oh yeah, that's exactly what they did. Please hear this man out and draw your own conclusions. Share with others. So pretty much, as the scriptures say, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? It's all hype. What they're pushing that strength. It's all hype. Because the Most High is going to strip them of that strength. I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou wast not aware. And thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord. We can piss God off as much as we want. Now we have the technology to do whatever. He can hold the rain. We can make rain. Yeah, all right. We're going to see how that's going to go for you. The Lord hath opened his armory. And what is the Lord's armory? Well, he has the angels, Yahawashi and the angels. He has, military men. He has locusts and different other animals that are his army. And he also has the missiles. The Lord hath opened his armory and hath brought forth the weapons of his indignation, because this is what's going to do the damage. It's going to appease the Most High's anger. Psalm 75 and 8, I believe it is. It says, 8. For in the hand of the Lord there is a cup, and the wine is red. It is full of mixture, and he poureth out of the same. But the dregs thereof, all the wicked of the earth shall wring them out and drink them. So the Most High's, these weapons are of the Lord's indignation. This is that wine that the Lord is going to mingle here in America. For this is the work of the Lord, power of hosts, in the land of the Chaldeans. All right. Come against her from the utmost border. Open her storehouses. Cast her up as heaps, and destroy her utterly. Let nothing of her be left. So this place is finished, man. I mean, you can go on and on. There's all kind of, call together the archers against Babylon, all ye that bend the bow, camp against it round about. Let none thereof escape. Recompense her according to her work, according to all that she hath done, do unto her. For she hath been proud against the Lord, against the Holy One of Israel. And Barak Atha Yahawah Bashem Yahawashi for that, man. This place can't go down fast enough. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say shalom and tawada to you brothers for putting all those precepts up. Salaki, I couldn't get to more of them. Shalom.